He gave $20 to a starving girl while selling fruit. A decade later, a mysterious visitor returned, revealing a surprising connection. The long sun-baked road stretched through miles of farmland, the kind that seemed to lead nowhere. On its edge stood Samuel's modest fruit stand, a weathered structure that had seen better days. Beneath the rickety roof, baskets brimmed with fresh produce, apples, peaches, and watermelons, their vibrant hues promising sweetness under the sun's relentless glare. Samuel wiped sweat from his brow with a faded handkerchief. His face, lined and rugged, bore the quiet resilience of a man who had spent most of his life working the land. His farm was small, but it provided enough to sell fruit by the roadside, his only source of income since losing his wife a decade ago. Fresh fruit. Best peaches you'll find, he called out, his voice carrying across the empty stretch of road. Most days, a few locals would stop by, and occasionally a traveler would pull over, eager for a refreshing slice of watermelon. Today, however, the road remained quiet, save for the faint rustle of leaves in the breeze. As Samuel rearranged the baskets, he noticed a young girl hovering near the edge of the stand. She looked to be around 12, with tangled hair and a dress too big for her slight frame. Her eyes, wide and cautious, darted between the fruit and the road, as if contemplating an escape. Samuel leaned against the counter, his voice softening. "Looking for something, miss?" The girl didn't respond immediately. Instead, she clutched a small tin can against her chest, her knuckles white. It was dented and empty, a stark contrast to the colorful bounty before her. "I don't have any money," she mumbled, her voice barely audible. Samuel's gaze softened. He had seen hard times before and knew what hunger looked like. He reached into the basket and picked out a ripe peach, its skin blushed with hues of gold and crimson. "Here," he said, holding it out. The girl's eyes widened, but she didn't move. "I can't. I don't want to take something for free." Samuel chuckled, his voice warm. "You wouldn't be. Consider it a gift. Everyone needs a little help now and then." The girl hesitated before reaching out with trembling hands. Her fingers barely brushed the peach before she pulled back, as if expecting it to be snatched away. "Take it," Samuel insisted, this time with a gentle nod. Finally, she accepted the fruit, holding it as if it were the most precious thing in the world. Samuel then reached into his pocket, pulling out a crumpled $20 bill. "This'll get you a decent meal and maybe some shoes," he said, placing it on the counter. Tears welled in the girl's eyes, but she quickly blinked them away. "Thank you, mister," she whispered before turning and hurrying down the road, the peach and the money clutched tightly in her hands. Samuel watched her until she disappeared into the horizon. He sighed, returning to his stand, unaware that this small act of kindness would ripple through time in ways he could never imagine. For the next decade, life continued much the same. Samuel worked his farm, sold his fruit, and occasionally thought about the girl. He hoped she had found her way to a better life, but never expected to see her again. The days passed, blending into seasons. Samuel had no family left, only the quiet companionship of his land. And though he had grown used to the solitude, there were moments when he wondered if his simple life had made any lasting impact on the world. Samuel's farm sat on a modest patch of land, flanked by fields of golden corn and rows of fruit trees that swayed gently in the wind. The farmhouse, though small, was sturdy, its chipped white paint and creaky porch bearing witness to years of hard work and quiet perseverance. Inside, the air carried the faint scent of fresh apples and old wood, a comforting mix that reminded Samuel of simpler times. His days followed a steady rhythm, rising with the sun, tending to his crops, and setting up his roadside stand. Though life was predictable, Samuel found solace in its constancy. He had long accepted that his legacy wouldn't be measured in grand achievements, but in the quiet joy of nourishing his community with the fruits of his labor. In town, Samuel was a familiar figure. Every Friday, he visited the local market to stock up on supplies and chat with the other vendors. Though he preferred the solitude of his farm, these brief interactions grounded him. One of his closest acquaintances was Miriam, the owner of a small bakery known for its buttery pastries and warm smiles. "Samuel, you're too thin," Miriam said one morning as he stopped by her stall. She handed him a paper bag filled with fresh bread. "Take this on the house." He chuckled, shaking his head. "You spoil me, Miriam." She waved him off. "Consider it my contribution to keeping you healthy. Can't have our best fruit supplier wasting away." Their exchanges were brief but comforting, a reminder that even in his quiet life, Samuel wasn't entirely alone. Back on the farm, Samuel often found himself reflecting on the past. His wife Clara had been his partner in everything, planting, harvesting, and dreaming of a future filled with laughter and family. When she passed away, the farm became his refuge, a place where he could lose himself in the rhythm of the seasons. But even in solitude, the memory of the young girl lingered. He would sometimes glance down the road, half expecting to see her small figure reappear. Though she had vanished that day, her quiet gratitude had left an indelible mark on him. One afternoon, as Samuel was pruning the peach trees, a boy from the nearby town approached. He was about 12, with an oversized backpack and a wide grin. "Mr. Samuel," the boy asked, his voice full of curiosity. Samuel straightened, wiping his hands on his jeans. "That's me. What can I do for you?" "I'm looking to earn some money," the boy said. "My mom said you might need help around the farm." Samuel smiled. "What's your name, son?" "Ethan," the boy replied, extending a hand. "Well, Ethan, I could use an extra pair of hands," Samuel said, shaking it. "You know anything about farming?" "Not much, but I'm a quick learner." And so Ethan became a regular fixture on a farm, helping with everything from picking fruit to repairing fences. Though he was young, his enthusiasm was infectious, and Samuel found himself enjoying the boy's company. Over time, their bond deepened. Samuel taught Ethan the art of tending to the land, and in return, Ethan brought a youthful energy that brightened the old farmer's days. The boy's presence reminded Samuel of the joy of passing down knowledge, of leaving a mark, however small, on the next generation. Through these interactions, the world around Samuel began to feel less isolating. The farm, once a place of quiet reflection, became a space of shared stories and laughter. And yet, despite these new connections, a part of him still wondered about the girl from the road. The years had been kind to the farm, but as Samuel worked the land with Ethan, he began to notice subtle signs of decline. The peach trees, once bursting with fruit, yielded fewer harvests. A recent drought had left the soil dry and cracked, and the rising cost of maintaining the farm loomed like a storm cloud on the horizon. "Ethan, these trees are struggling," Samuel muttered one day, inspecting a wilting branch. "We'll need to water them more, but with the well running low, we might not have enough." Ethan wiped sweat from his brow, his youthful optimism unwavering. "We could try mulching. I read it helps retain moisture." Samuel smiled, appreciating the boy's enthusiasm. "Good idea. Let's give it a shot." Despite their efforts, the challenges kept mounting. One afternoon, as Samuel was packing up his fruit stand, a sleek black car pulled over. Out stepped a man in a tailored suit, his polished shoes sinking slightly into the dusty ground. "Mr. Samuel Ward," the man asked, his tone businesslike. "That's me," Samuel replied cautiously. "I'm from Green Valley Development," the man said, handing Samuel a card. "We're interested in purchasing your land. We believe it has great potential for a new residential project." Samuel frowned, the weight of the man's words sinking in. "This land isn't for sale." The man's smile didn't falter. "I understand, but we're prepared to offer a generous sum, enough to ensure a comfortable retirement." Samuel shook his head. "This farm's been in my family for generations. It's not about money." The man's smile tightened. "Think it over. Our offer won't last forever." As the car drove away, Samuel felt a knot of unease in his chest. Selling the farm was unthinkable, yet the financial strain was becoming harder to ignore. Later that evening, over a simple dinner, Ethan noticed Samuel's furrowed brow. "Everything okay?" the boy asked. Samuel hesitated before sharing the day's events. "They want to buy the farm, turn it into some fancy neighborhood." Ethan's eyes widened. "But you're not selling, right?" Samuel sighed. "Of course not. But things are getting tough, Ethan. If the drought continues and the harvest don't pick up, we'll figure it out," Ethan said firmly. "There's got to be another way." Despite Ethan's reassurance, the following weeks brought little relief. The drought persisted, and the farm's expenses continued to climb. Samuel began to feel the weight of his isolation more acutely, each day a battle against forces beyond his control. One evening, as Samuel sat on his porch, nursing a cup of coffee, Ethan joined him. The boy had become more than just a farmhand. He was like family. "Samuel," Ethan said, breaking the silence, "maybe we should ask for help." Samuel raised an eyebrow. "Help from who?" Ethan shrugged. "The community. You've been helping people around here for years. Maybe it's time they helped you." Samuel considered the idea, but his pride made it hard to accept. I've always managed on my own, Ethan. Asking for help doesn't come easy. Ethan leaned forward, his gaze earnest. Sometimes strength isn't about doing everything alone. It's about knowing when to lean on others. Samuel sighed, the boy's words hitting closer to home than he cared to admit. The next day, Ethan spread the word around town. To Samuel's surprise, people began to show up, neighbors, old friends, and even passers-by who had once bought fruit from his stand. They brought tools, seeds, and their own hands to work the land. The farm buzzed with renewed energy, but the fight was far from over. The drought still loomed, and the pressure from Green Valley development didn't let up. Samuel knew that the road ahead would be challenging, but for the first time in years, he felt a glimmer of hope. As the days went by, the farm slowly regained its strength. The community's support had breathed new life into the fields, and Samuel felt a renewed sense of purpose. Yet, even with the farm's partial recovery, a sense of unease lingered. Green Valley development had not backed down, and their offers became increasingly aggressive. One morning, as Samuel and Ethan loaded crates of peaches onto the stand, a familiar figure appeared. It was Miriam, the baker, her apron dusted with flour and a determined look on her face. "Samuel," she said, hands on her hips, "we need to talk." Samuel wiped his hands on a cloth. "What's on your mind, Miriam?" She pulled out a folded piece of paper from her pocket. "Word around town is that Green Valley won't stop until they get this land. But I've been digging. Turns out they're facing legal troubles. Their developments in other towns have led to environmental damages, and they're being investigated." Samuel took the paper, scanning its contents. "How did you find this?" Miriam shrugged. "Let's just say I have a cousin who works in city planning. Thought you'd want to know." This revelation added a new layer of complexity. If Green Valley was under scrutiny, perhaps their influence wasn't as unshakable as it seemed. But Samuel knew that legal battles could drag on for years, and the farm couldn't afford to wait. Meanwhile, Ethan had been quietly working on his own project. One evening, as they were wrapping up for the day, he approached Samuel with a laptop in hand. "I've been learning about crowdfunding," Ethan said, his excitement barely contained. "What if we start a campaign to save the farm? We could share your story, let people know what this place means to the community." Samuel hesitated. "You think people would care enough to help?" Ethan nodded. "You'd be surprised. There are folks out there who believe in preserving land and supporting farmers. We just have to reach them." Reluctantly, Samuel agreed. Together, they created a video, with Ethan filming while Samuel spoke about the farm's history, its struggles, and its role in the town's fabric. Within days, the campaign began to gain traction. Donations trickled in, accompanied by heartfelt messages from strangers who resonated with Samuel's story. But as the campaign gained momentum, so did the pressure from Green Valley. One afternoon, a new representative from the company arrived at the farm. Unlike the previous visitor, this one was younger, with an air of confidence that bordered on arrogance. "Mr. Ward," he began, adjusting his sleek tie, "I'll get straight to the point. We're offering double the initial amount. It's more than fair, and you'd be foolish to refuse." Samuel crossed his arms, his gaze steady. "I've told you before, this land isn't for sale." The man smirked. "That's unfortunate. But I'll leave you with this. There are ways to make things difficult for those who don't cooperate." As the man drove off, Ethan emerged from the barn, his face flushed with anger. "They can't get away with this, Samuel. We have to fight back." Samuel nodded, his jaw set. "We will, but we'll do it on our terms." Despite the threats, the community continued to rally behind Samuel. Miriam organized a farmers market fundraiser, while Ethan expanded the campaign's reach through social media. The farm became a symbol of resistance, a beacon for those who valued integrity over profit. Yet, amidst the growing tension, life on the farm carried on. Samuel found solace in the small moments, the sound of the wind rustling through the trees, the warmth of the sun on his back, and the laughter of children picking fruit during weekend visits. The farm was bustling one crisp autumn morning. Samuel was tending to the orchard while Ethan handled the fruit stand, which had grown busier thanks to the crowdfunding campaign's reach. Customers from nearby towns now visited regularly, drawn by the story of the farm's fight for survival. Samuel wiped his brow, enjoying the cool breeze. Just as he returned to pruning a peach tree, the sleek black car pulled into the dirt driveway. Samuel's stomach tightened as he assumed it was yet another representative from Green Valley Development. Instead, a woman stepped out. She was in her late 20s, her tailored coat and confidence stride a stark contrast to the rugged farm. She held a leather portfolio under her arm, her face calm but purposeful. Samuel approached cautiously. "Can I help you, miss?" The woman smiled faintly. "Mr. Ward, I've been looking for you. My name is Abigail. I'm here to thank you." Samuel's brows furrowed. "Thank me? Have we met before?" Abigail nodded, her eyes softening. "It was a long time ago. I'm not sure if you remember, but when I was a child, I was starving and alone. You gave me a peach and $20. The words hit Samuel like a wave. His mind raced back to that day, the young girl clutching a tin can, her face gaunt with hunger. "You're the girl from the road," he murmured, his voice thick with emotion. Abigail smiled, her eyes glistening. "Yes, that small act of kindness changed my life. I used the money to buy food, and eventually, I found my way to a shelter. From there, I got an education, and now," she opened her portfolio, revealing documents bearing the letterhead of a prestigious law firm. "I'm a lawyer specializing in land rights and environmental law." Samuel stared in disbelief as Abigail continued. "I've been following your campaign. When I saw the threats from Green Valley Development, I knew I had to step in. They've been using unethical tactics, but we have enough evidence to file an injunction to stop their project." Ethan, who'd overheard the conversation, ran up, his eyes wide. "You can really do that?" Abigail nodded. "With your permission, Mr. Ward, I'll represent you and the farm pro bono. We'll take the fight to court, and I'm confident we can win." Samuel's hands trembled as he processed her words. "All this, because of a peach," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Abigail placed a hand on his shoulder. "Because of your kindness, Mr. Ward. You didn't just give me food, you gave me hope. Now it's my turn to help you." For the first time in months, Samuel felt a weight lift from his shoulders. He glanced at Ethan, who grinned from ear to ear, and then back at Abigail. "Let's do it," he said, his voice firm. "Let's save the farm." The following weeks were a whirlwind. Abigail filed the injunction, and the case quickly gained media attention. News outlets picked up the story of the small-town farmer standing up against a corporate giant, backed by the very girl he had once helped. The farm became a symbol of hope and resilience, drawing even more support from the community and beyond. Green Valley Development, now under intense scrutiny, began to backpedal. Their legal team attempted to settle out of court, but Abigail stood firm, demanding a full halt to their operations on Samuel's land. One brisk morning, as Samuel and Ethan worked in the orchard, Abigail arrived with a stack of papers in hand. "We did it," she announced, her voice triumphant. "The court ruled in our favor. Green Valley is barred from any further development on this property." Cheers erupted from the gathered crowd of supporters. Samuel stood in stunned silence, then broke into a wide smile. He turned to Abigail, his eyes shining. "I don't know how to thank you." Abigail shook her head. "You already did years ago." The news of the court victory spread quickly, bringing an overwhelming sense of relief and triumph to Samuel and the entire community. The farm was safe, and Green Valley Development's grip had been loosened. Yet, amidst the celebration, Samuel found himself reflecting on the deeper impact of what had just unfolded. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, the farm was alive with laughter and music. Neighbors gathered for an impromptu celebration, bringing dishes to share under the string lights Ethan had hung between the trees. The air was filled with the sweet scent of fresh fruit and the sound of joy. Samuel sat quietly on the porch, watching the scene unfold. Abigail joined him, her coat draped over her shoulders against the evening chill. She handed him a cup of cider, her expression thoughtful. "You've built something special here," she said, gesturing to the lively gathering. "It's more than just a farm. It's a home for so many people." Samuel nodded, his gaze distant. "It hasn't been easy, but I guess the hardest things are often the most worthwhile." Abigail smiled. "You've shown that even the smallest acts of kindness can ripple out in ways we can't imagine." Ethan bounded over, his youthful energy lighting up the porch. "Samuel, you've got to come see this." Miriam brought her famous peach cobbler, and everyone's saying it's the best she's ever made. Samuel chuckled, rising to his feet. "Well, we can't let a claim like that go untested." As the night wore on, Samuel felt a profound sense of connection. For years, he had carried the weight of solitude, believing his quiet life on the farm was a solitary journey. But now, surrounded by friends old and new, he realized how much his life had intertwined with those around him. Yet, the victory was not without its consequences. The farm's sudden fame had drawn attention beyond their small town. Samuel began receiving letters from strangers, some offering support, others seeking advice or connection. While he was grateful for the outpouring of kindness, it also brought a new set of challenges. One morning, as Samuel sorted through the mail, he found a letter from a young woman in another state. She described how her family had been displaced by a similar development project and asked for guidance on how to fight back. Samuel showed the letter to Abigail. "I want to help her," he said, his voice resolute. "But I'm just a farmer. I don't know where to start." Abigail leaned forward, her expression serious. "You're more than that, Samuel. Your story has inspired people. We can use what we've learned to help others. It doesn't have to stop with this farm." With Abigail's guidance, Samuel began working on a new initiative, one that would support other small farmers and landowners facing similar threats. Together, they organized workshops, sharing strategies and legal advice to empower communities to stand up against powerful corporations. Meanwhile, Ethan took on more responsibility at the farm, ensuring its operations continued smoothly. His bond with Samuel deepened, and he began to see the farm not just as a place to work, but as a home where he could grow and thrive. One day, as they walked through the orchard, Ethan turned to Samuel. "I've been thinking," he said, a hint of nervous excitement in his voice. "I want to stay here for good. Maybe even take over the farm one day." Samuel stopped, a wave of emotion washing over him. "You mean that?" Ethan nodded. "This place has given me so much. I want to keep it going, not just for us, but for everyone who believes in what we're doing." Samuel placed a hand on Ethan's shoulder, his voice steady. "You've already become a part of this farm's legacy, Ethan, and I'd be proud to see you carry it forward." The decision marked a new chapter for the farm. While Samuel had always seen it as his personal refuge, it was now clear that its true strength lay in its ability to bring people together and create lasting change. In the months that followed, Samuel and Ethan worked tirelessly to adapt to the farm's growing role as both community hub and a symbol of resilience. The workshops Abigail helped organize became a regular event, drawing in farmers and landowners from neighboring states. Each gathering brought new stories of struggle and triumph, reinforcing the idea that collective action could achieve what once seemed impossible. The farm itself flourished in ways Samuel hadn't anticipated. With Ethan's help, they introduced new crops and sustainable practices, ensuring the land would remain fertile for generations. Samuel, who once viewed change with cautious reluctance, now embraced it, finding joy in teaching Ethan and other young farmers the intricacies of the trade. One morning, as Samuel walked through the orchard, he noticed the trees were more vibrant than they'd been in years. The peaches were plump, their skins glowing in the soft light of dawn. It was a sight that filled him with quiet pride, a testament to the hard work and perseverance of everyone involved. Ethan joined him, carrying a clipboard and a broad smile. "Looks like we're set for a record harvest this year," he said. Samuel nodded, his eyes scanning the rows of trees. "It's more than I could have hoped for." Ethan hesitated for a moment before speaking again. "I've been thinking about expanding our market. There's a demand for organic, locally grown produce in the city. If we could reach more people, we could make an even bigger impact." Samuel chuckled. "You've got big ideas, Ethan. But I like where your head's at. Let's explore it." Their partnership continued to evolve, with Ethan taking the lead on marketing and outreach while Samuel focused on the day-to-day operations of the farm. The dynamic worked seamlessly, blending Samuel's wisdom with Ethan's innovative spirit. Meanwhile, Abigail's involvement deepened as well. She became a frequent visitor, helping not only with legal matters but also contributing to the farm's vision of sustainability and education. Her connection to the farm grew beyond professional obligation. It became a personal mission, a way to honor the man who had once saved her life. One afternoon, as they were preparing for another workshop, Abigail pulled Samuel aside. "You know," she said, her tone light but sincere, "you built something incredible here. This farm isn't just about fruit. It's about hope and community. You should be proud." Samuel smiled, his weathered face softening. "I couldn't have done it without you and Ethan. This farm is as much yours as it is mine." Abigail's eyes glimmered with emotion. "It means more than you know. As the farm continued to thrive, Samuel found himself reflecting on the journey that had brought them to this point. The memory of the young girl from the road, now a successful lawyer fighting for justice, reminded him of the profound impact of even the smallest acts of kindness. But it wasn't just Abigail's transformation that struck him. Ethan, once a boy seeking odd jobs, had grown into a capable and passionate leader. Together, they had turned the farm into a beacon of hope, proving that even in the face of adversity, resilience and unity could pave the way for a brighter future. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Samuel stood on the porch, watching the golden light bathe the fields. Ethan joined him, and for a moment, they stood in comfortable silence, taking in the beauty of the land they had worked so hard to protect. "It's amazing, isn't it?" Ethan said finally. "How far we've come." Samuel nodded. "It is, and it's just the beginning." Their conversation was interrupted by the sound of approaching footsteps. Turning, they saw Abigail walking up the path, carrying a folder of documents and a warm smile. "I've got good news," she said, holding up the folder. "We've secured funding for a new irrigation system. It'll help keep the farm sustainable even in the toughest conditions." Samuel's eyes lit up. "That's incredible." "Thank you, Abigail." She shrugged. "Just doing my part." The three of them stood together, their shared vision clear. The farm was more than just a place to grow fruit. It was a testament to the power of community, a living reminder that even the smallest seeds of kindness could grow into something extraordinary. The farm buzzed with renewed energy as Samuel and Ethan prepared for the upcoming Harvest Festival, a celebration of the community's resilience and their shared victories. Abigail, as always, was deeply involved, balancing legal work with helping on the farm. She was a constant presence, her sharp mind and warm demeanor guiding Samuel through each challenge. But lately, Samuel had noticed subtle changes in her. Abigail seemed more fatigued, her usual vibrant energy dimmed. She often excused herself early, clutching her coat tightly around her as if warding off a persistent chill. "Everything all right?" Samuel asked one evening as they reviewed documents for the next workshop. Abigail forced a smile. "Just a little tired. It's been a busy week." Samuel frowned but didn't press further. He trusted Abigail to speak up if something was wrong. Yet, as days turned into weeks, her condition seemed to worsen. She grew paler, and her once steady hands occasionally trembled as she worked. Ethan was the first to voice his concerns. "Samuel, have you noticed Abigail lately? She's not herself." Samuel nodded, his brow furrowed. "I've seen it too. But she won't say anything." They decided to keep a closer eye on her, hoping to find an opportunity to help without overstepping. But Abigail remained as determined as ever, pushing through her evident discomfort to support the farm. The turning point came during a community meeting. Abigail was presenting their latest legal victory when her voice faltered, and she gripped the table for support. Before anyone could react, she collapsed. Chaos erupted as Samuel and Ethan rushed to her side. "Call an ambulance," Samuel shouted, his heart pounding. Within minutes, Abigail was on her way to the hospital, leaving a stunned and worried community behind. The hospital's fluorescent lights buzzed softly as Samuel sat in the waiting room, his hands clasped tightly in front of him. Ethan paced back and forth, his youthful energy now tinged with anxiety. Neither of them spoke, the weight of their worry settling in the silence between them. Finally, after what felt like hours, a doctor approached. "Are you here for Abigail Carter?" Samuel shot to his feet. "Yes, how is she?" The doctor's face was calm but serious. "She's stable now, but we need to talk. Abigail has been living with a chronic condition, lupus. It's an autoimmune disease that can cause severe fatigue, joint pain, and, in her case, complications with her heart and kidneys. From what we can tell, she's been managing this on her own for a long time, but the stress and overexertion have worsened her condition. She needs rest and long-term care to recover." Samuel's heart sank. He thought back to all the moments Abigail had pushed herself, never once letting on that she was struggling. "She never told us," he said softly. The doctor nodded. "That's not uncommon. Many people with chronic conditions try to carry on as usual, not wanting to burden others. But she's reached a point where she can't do it alone anymore." Samuel thanked the doctor and followed a nurse to Abigail's room. Ethan trailed behind, his face pale and drawn. Abigail lay in a hospital bed, her complexion even paler than before. Her eyes fluttered open as they entered, and she managed a weak smile. "Guess I scared you," she murmured. Samuel pulled a chair close to her bed. You should have told us, Abigail. We could have helped. She sighed, her voice barely above a whisper. I didn't want to be a burden. There was so much to do, and I couldn't let you down. Ethan stepped forward, his voice filled with emotion. You've done more for us than we could ever repay. Now it's our turn to help you. Abigail's eyes glistened with unshed tears. I didn't want this to become about me. The farm, it's more important. Samuel shook his head. You're as much a part of this farm as the land itself. We'll handle things from here, but first, we're getting you back on your feet. Word of Abigail's condition spread quickly through the town. The same people who had once come together to save the farm now mobilized to support her. Miriam organized a meal train, ensuring Abigail would have homemade food once she returned home. Others offered to help with her legal work, volunteering their time and resources to ease her burden. Back on the farm, Samuel and Ethan stepped up to handle everything Abigail had managed before. Ethan expanded the crowdfunding campaign, this time sharing Abigail's story. The response was overwhelming. Donations poured in, accompanied by messages of gratitude for the woman who had fought tirelessly for justice. One message stood out. It came from a small nonprofit organization specializing in providing medical support for people with chronic illnesses. They offered to cover Abigail's medical expenses and provide her with a team of specialists to ensure she received the best care possible. When Samuel shared the news with Abigail, she was overwhelmed. I don't know how to thank you, she said, her voice choked with emotion. You don't have to, Samuel replied. You've been fighting for all of us. Now we're fighting for you. Weeks passed, and Abigail slowly began to recover. Her strength returned bit by bit, though she still had a long road ahead. Despite her initial reluctance, she allowed herself to lean on the community, embracing the support she had so often given to others. The Harvest Festival, which had been postponed due to her hospitalization, was finally rescheduled. This time, it became a celebration not just of the farm's survival, but of Abigail's resilience and the unbreakable bonds of their community. On the day of the festival, Abigail arrived at the farm, her steps slow but steady. The crowd erupted in cheers as she made her way to the front, where Samuel and Ethan stood waiting. Samuel handed her the microphone. This festival is for you, Abigail. You've given us more than we could ever repay. Now it's your turn to see just how much you mean to all of us. Abigail smiled, tears streaming down her face. I've always believed in the power of community, but being on the receiving end of that support, it's humbling. Thank you, all of you, for showing me that none of us has to face our battles alone. The festival was a resounding success, filled with laughter, music, and an overwhelming sense of unity. As the sun set, casting a warm golden glow over the farm, Samuel looked around, taking in the scene. For the first time in years, he felt a deep sense of peace. The farm had weathered its storms, and so had Abigail. Together, they had proven that even in the face of life's greatest challenges, hope and resilience could prevail. The festival wound down as twilight set in, but the warmth of the day lingered in the hearts of everyone who had gathered. Samuel stood by the orchard, gazing out at the rows of trees illuminated by the soft glow of string lights. The laughter and chatter of the community still echoed behind him, a reminder of how far they had all come. Abigail approached slowly, her steps steady but careful. She carried a small box and wore a gentle smile. Thought you might like this, she said, handing it to Samuel. Samuel opened the box to find a polished wooden plaque inside. It read, Ward Family Farm, a beacon of hope. He traced the engraved words with his fingers, his throat tightening. This farm has always been my life, but you and Ethan made it so much more, he said, his voice thick with emotion. You gave it a purpose beyond what I ever imagined. Abigail nodded. And you've shown all of us what resilience truly means. This place isn't just a farm. It's a testament to what we can accomplish when we stand together. Ethan joined them, carrying 3 cups of cider. To the farm, he said, raising his cup. Samuel and Abigail raised theirs in unison. To the farm, they echoed, clinking their cups together. As they sipped the cider, Samuel felt a profound sense of fulfillment. The challenges they had faced had tested their limits, but in overcoming them, they had built something extraordinary. The farm was now a symbol of hope, a legacy that would endure for generations. Abigail glanced up at the stars, her eyes reflecting their light. What's next for you, Samuel? He chuckled. For now, I'm just looking forward to enjoying the quiet moments. But I have a feeling this farm story is far from over. Ethan grinned. And I'm here for the long haul. We've got plenty more to build. The three of them stood in comfortable silence, the weight of their journey settling into the cool night air. Together, they had faced adversity and emerged stronger, bound by a shared vision and an unshakable belief in the power of community. And as Samuel looked out over the land that had shaped his life, he knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, united by hope, resilience, and the enduring spirit of the farm. Months later, the farm stood as a thriving beacon of hope. The orchard, lush and abundant, bore fruits sweeter than ever, and the community continued to grow closer through shared effort and support. Abigail, now fully recovered, balanced her legal work with helping Samuel and Ethan plan for the future. The workshops expanded, attracting people from even farther away, each seeking guidance and inspiration. One crisp morning, Samuel walked the familiar rows of peach trees, the air filled with the scent of ripening fruit. Ethan joined him, carrying a notebook filled with new ideas for the farm's next chapter. "We could add a small cafe here," Ethan suggested, pointing to an open space near the orchard. "A place where people can enjoy fresh fruit right from the trees." Samuel smiled. "I like it. Let's make it happen." As they stood there, planning the future, Abigail arrived with a letter in hand. "It's from the nonprofit," she said, her voice bright. "They want us to help launch a nationwide program to protect small farms." Samuel took the letter, his heart swelling with pride. The farm story had begun as a quiet, personal journey, but now its impact was spreading far beyond what he could have imagined. Together, they looked out over the land, knowing that this was just the beginning of a new chapter. The farm's legacy would live on, not just in the fruits it bore, but in the lives it touched. The story of Samuel's farm reminds us all that even in the face of overwhelming challenges, resilience and kindness can light the way. Have you ever experienced a moment when the support of others helped you overcome the odds? Or perhaps you've been the one offering a helping hand. We'd love to hear your story. Share your thoughts and reflections in the comments below, and let's keep this spirit of community alive. Together, we can make a difference, one small act of kindness at a time.